Ku soo dhawow Baghdad Online Academy.
Hi, this is Thomas. Welcome back to Project Management Fundamentals. Today's lecture is on project planning. In this topic, we'll discuss three concepts: scope management, time management, and finance management. In looking at scope management, we're going to consider two areas. The product scope is relating to the recipient of our goods or services. This is from the perspective of our customer. And the product scope describes the products and services that the project will deliver. And the scope is important because, as we've mentioned previously, scope is one of the constraints of project management. We can't do everything, and we need to be clear on what it is that we are going to provide in our project. And from the perspective of the provider or our organization, the project scope describes the work that will be completed. From our perspective, we need to think about the resources that will be required, the people we need to get involved, outside services we might need to contract, and the money we will need to spend. A work breakdown structure is a tool that we will use to help us manage and get from the high level of the overall project down to packages of work, which can then further be broken down into individual tasks. And the benefits of the work breakdown structure are they are guidance for sequencing. The benefits of the work breakdown structure include the work breakdown structure provides several benefits. One is it's a guidance for sequencing. How do we know which part of the project we need to do at the beginning, what we need to do later, what we need to do at the end with our work breakdown structure, and the details that we have of our work packages and tasks that will help us to clarify sequencing. Also, understanding the resource requirements that we have is difficult to estimate accurately at a high level. When we break down into more and more detailed tasks, it will enable us to create a more accurate estimate of what we're going to need from the standpoint of time and manpower and money. We can also use the work breakdown structure to help us identify required services that we might need to contract outside of our organization. Once we're looking at detailed task level activities, services that we might need that we weren't aware of originally will become clear. The work breakdown structure also helps us to understand the work hierarchy, which is the concept of moving from a high-level project management thinking down to work package thinking, looking at groups of activities, down to a more detailed task-level thinking. The work hierarchy along with the interfaces, the interactions as we move from the high level to the low level, and how the different perspectives enable us to understand how tasks and packages of activity work together. In developing the work breakdown structure, it's important to be comprehensive in thinking about the tasks required for a project. The obvious type of task is the task that's directly related to the project itself, whatever the product or service is that we're providing to the community. But in addition to that, we also need to keep in mind the indirect work tasks, which relate to the management and administration of our project. And here we have examples: planning and control processes, training the stakeholders who are going to be the beneficiaries of our project, communications and reporting to both the beneficiaries as well as our donors, procurement processes, and the end of project transition when the project is complete and is handed off to the community. Here's an example of a graphic work breakdown structure, moving from the top general level down through several layers into more and more detailed levels of activity. So here we're moving from the overall project level to work packages to individual tasks. Now let's look at the topic of time management, here addressing schedule planning. We have 5 steps to developing a schedule. We need to identify our activities as well as the sequencing of those activities. We need to have estimates for resource usage as well as activity duration. How long do individual tasks take? And then we can develop a schedule for the project. For estimating resource usage and duration, we have several tools available. We will look in this lecture at the network diagram and the critical path, and in our lecture on project management disciplines towards the end of the course, we'll look at an example of a Gantt chart. Here we have an example of a network diagram. The network diagram shows us in graphic format the time requirements for each of our tasks. And in addition to the network diagram, here we've layered on, this is the blue components of the network diagram, we've layered on the critical path. The critical path is the least amount of time in which you can complete a project. And we can see that for this project, the least amount of time we need is 23 days. If you look to the far left of the diagram, we see three tasks that are happening in one vertical column. These are happening simultaneously, but notice that digging the hole takes the most time. We might finish building the latrine cap, but the hole won't be completed. Digging the hole won't be completed, and until that's done, we can't continue to make progress. So digging the hole is part of the critical path, and that entire critical path in this particular example is 23 days. That's the least amount of time that we need to complete this project. Now let's look at the topic of finance management, in particular budgeting. Budgeting should be comprehensive and detailed. Comprehensive means that it includes all aspects of the project. We've discussed direct costs, which are the expenditures directly relating to the project activity. We've discussed indirect costs, which are the administrative and management components of the project. A third category is shared services. The organization that is running the project might have perhaps a driver that's working on multiple projects in the same area, or a finance manager that's working on multiple projects, and we want to have a means of allocating a portion of the cost of the driver, a portion of the cost of the finance manager to our project. So the shared services are an important component of the budget, as are direct and indirect costs. And the budget should be detailed. It should be based on specific activities, not general activity, but specific task level activity, and should be structured in a drill down format. What that means is we might have a line item that is relating to labor, and then that labor we can drill down to see in more detail that 4 people are involved in labor. And when we look at one of those people, we can drill down farther to see how many hours per week they're working, or perhaps how many total hours they're estimated to work on the project, what the per hour cost is of that work, so that we can, at that very detailed level, build up to the summary budget. So the summary budget is our line item, for example, labor. We can drill down to see the details of how that item was calculated. In developing the budget, we have 3 options for structure. The first is using top-down estimates. Here we start with the overall estimate for the project cost and allocate that total amount to various work packages, and then the individuals responsible for those work packages will decide how to allocate their allocation to the individual components of their work package. Another method is bottom-up estimates. Here we start from the detailed task level of activity, build up to the costs required for individual work packages, and then add those costs up to arrive at a total project cost estimate. And a third option is parametric estimates, which is based on statistics. We will focus on the top-down and bottom-up estimate structures for our activity in project management fundamentals. This concludes the lecture on project planning.